Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg from Jerusalem, and tonight I'm going to be doing another class in the series of classes on on Pisces ascendant, Jupiter and the different signs. Tonight we'll be doing Jupiter in Gemini, another sign where Jupiter is in detriment. Last week we did Jupiter in Virgo, the chart of Frank Capra, and tonight we're going to do a chart of somebody, very, very famous man, one of the most famous men in history. Everybody knows who he is, but we'll come back to it in a second. His name was Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, one of the most important inventions of the 20th century, late 19th century, 20th century, tremendously important. But first let's talk a little about Again, the Pisces wants to, they suffer. They overcome their suffering through communication, the third house, right? They turn to the third house with Jupiter there in Gemini. And even though it's in detriment, again, like we said before, it's not necessarily bad. It just, again, if you can learn to analyze and synthesize together, it's quite good. It gives a person who's an excellent public speaker. By the way, Geminis love to talk, and you got Jupiter there, the planet of the great benefic. It gives them the ability to talk. The problem is if, so sometimes if it's like in his chart it's going to be square Mercury, so you get people that have, Jupiter, say in Gemini, square Mercury, they love to talk. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he invented the telephone, so he could talk all the time. But anyway, that's the person with Jupiter in Gemini. They love to talk. They have the gift of gab, and it makes them excellent public speakers because you like to have Jupiter, say, in Gemini, right? If you have Mars in Gemini, for example, the person a lot of times can be a liar. Again, it doesn't have to be because Mars perverts somehow, but also can be a person the opposite, a person who exposes lying. Right? Everything can work either way. You have to see by how it is in the whole context of the chart. So Jupiter in Gemini can be, Mars in Gemini can be somebody who lies, right? Because Gemini is speech, and Mars can somehow pervert the speech in order to get what they want. But on the other hand, it can be somebody who exposes. I've seen great debaters who have Mars in Gemini, because they love to expose the weaknesses in other people's arguments, the fallacies in other people's arguments. It's very important to them. And so again, but here he's got Alexander Graham Bell. We're going to see, a person in general who has Jupiter in Gemini is going to be an excellent speaker, especially when it's in the third house. That's the best house for Gemini, and if Jupiter's there, it's going to be good fortune in communications. He's going to try to overcome his suffering through communicating, through his neighbors, through making connections with people. Well, third house matters, and you'll see that in his chart that's what he did. He went and invented the telephone. It's interesting. Last week we saw a chart that was very, very highly motivated. We talked about a chart the planets are not in strong position, but even so, because there's so many tight aspects, being strong motivation, it can turn a horoscope into a stronger chart. There too, we're going to do a chart tonight, Alexander Graham Bell. If you look at his chart, his is the opposite. He's got both. He's got tremendously high motivation, plus a lot of planets in angles. So he must have been a very, very powerful man. If you look at his chart, he was big, strong. He looked like, you see his features were etched like in chisel. He was a very, very strong man, just from his picture that I looked at. And if you look in his chart, so he's got the positor, actually he's got Jupiter in Gemini, and also the dispositor in detriment. But what? The dispositor is on the ascendant. He's got Mercury on the ascendant, which makes the person very, very bright, right? People who have the Mercury on the ascendant is the planet of intelligence. So it's when it's in the first house, the person himself makes them very bright. And Jupiter being the dispositor, it's as if Jupiter is on the ascendant also, because it gives itself up to Mercury. So he's got the two top mental signs on his ascendant. Tremendous brilliance the man had. right? And he has 3 planets in Aries, the sign of the inventor, person who likes to do new things. But in any case, he's got also 3 planets on the ascendant. He's got Saturn, Sun, and Mercury all on the ascendant in Pisces, and so the Sun there, of course, is bringing him tremendous fame. And so it was a very, very successful chart. If you look at his chart, he's got 4 planets, talking about motivation. He's got 4 planets in the exact same degree, 24 degrees of their sign. He's got the moon in 24 degrees Virgo, exactly opposite Mercury in 24 degrees Pisces. And he's got Neptune and Pluto. No, not Neptune. Excuse me. He's got an exact conjunction of Uranus and Pluto in Aries at. Wait a second. No, I made a mistake. He's got Saturn. Wait a second. So he's only got 3 planets exactly in 24 degrees. But he's got also Neptune, which is the co-ruler, in 28 degrees, and it's connected very tight with all 3 of those planets. So again, it's going to make the Neptunian part of him very, very strong. But I think if you look closely at his chart, though, you see he's a very, very intellectual type of person, very, very creative, right? You've got the moon opposite the Mercury. When you have moon opposite the Mercury, it's going to give you, again, it's going to increase your speech. It's going to bring again, the moon in the 7th house is going to bring the masses. Mercury is going to bring communication to the masses. That would be very hard to predict, of course, if you didn't know who he was. But again, it's a man who wants to, communication is very important to him in his chart, because he's got that Jupiter in Gemini, and he's got Mercury on the ascendant. So it's a career. He started out actually as a teacher of the deaf people. His father worked in that field, and he went also to help people who were deaf, and then that led him off into eventually to discover the telephone, because again, Jupiter rules his 10th house, the career, and you got Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, communication, and it's very powerful. It also makes a tight square to the ascendant, and so it's a very, even though it's in the 3rd house, we're in detriment. We naturally would think it's weak because it's getting taken over by that Mercury. It's as if Jupiter is on the ascendant. It makes it very, very strong. And so that's another important point to look at when you're analyzing horoscopes. And so you see, just in general, it's a very, very powerful chart. From he's got 3, 4 planets, 5 planets. He's got Mars exalted in the 10th house, very sign of career success. He's got 3 planets on the ascendant, the moon in the 7th house, unusually powerful, and the tremendously high motivation of the horoscope. So I like the very, very interesting horoscope. I urge people to take a look at his horoscope, which we put up, and pay attention to it. And I thank everybody for listening.